There's a kind of longing that doesn't speak. It echoes. It doesn't cry out for their presence. It aches in the space they once illuminated within you. You think you miss them, but what if it's not their touch, their voice, their love? What if what you miss is you? The version of you that came alive beside them, the one who felt seen, invincible, timeless, the you that smiled like someone who remembered a forgotten dream. Carl Jung would call this an archetypal awakening, a moment when the soul, long buried beneath routines and roles, is stirred by the presence of someone who becomes more than a person. They become a mirror, a door, a myth. And Neville Goddard would whisper gently, "You were never seeing them. You were seeing your own reflection, magnified. So no, you're not missing them. You're remembering a fragment of yourself, a version that was only half-lived and now calls from the depths of your being to be reborn, fully. This isn't nostalgia. This is a summons, and you are being invited, not to chase what left, but to retrieve what was left behind in you. It wasn't your imagination, that sudden sense of aliveness, the way your body softened in their presence, the way your voice dared to say things you didn't even know you felt. There are people who don't enter our lives as lovers or partners. They enter as keys. They unlock doors we didn't know were still closed. Carl Jung called these moments archetypal, when an inner figure, long buried in the unconscious, awakens through another person, like a forgotten goddess brushing off centuries of dust, like a hidden flame that someone just by existing relit. And then they're gone, or maybe they stay, but the magic shifts. What once felt like a symphony becomes silence. And you ask yourself, was that real? Or was I just finally meeting myself through them? You're not grieving only the loss of a person. You're grieving the fear that the woman you became, luminous, daring, whole, might disappear now that the mirror is no longer there. But that version of you was never them. It was you. You awakened, and the soul, once awakened, does not go back to sleep. It waits. The sadness you carry is not about abandonment. It is the ache of remembering who you were becoming and feeling afraid you won't find her again. But she is here, listening, waiting for you to notice she never left. Modern spirituality often whispers, let go, move on, release what no longer serves you. But what if letting go too soon is not healing, but forgetting a message that hasn't yet been heard? Carl Jung warned of the dangers of bypassing the unconscious. Neville Goddard would ask, what self-image did you awaken when they appeared, and what truth about yourself did you abandon when they left? We don't just grieve people, we grieve the mythology they activated, the mirror they held up, the story we thought we were stepping into before it was interrupted. To let go without listening is to close the book without reading the final page. The unconscious is not fooled. If a symbol is not integrated, it will return through new faces, familiar patterns, and repeated ache. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means absorbing, digesting the presence they had in your myth. They were not a coincidence. They were a chapter of your inner cosmology. Until you understand the role they played in your soul's remembering, you'll keep calling them back, not through conscious choice, but through the silent choreography of unfinished transformation. Some souls don't come to stay. They come to reveal, to reflect. And in that reflection, something ancient awakens. A memory not from this life, perhaps, but from the soul's longing to return to itself. You thought you had found a home in them, but what you found was a doorway, a glimpse into a place within you that had been silent for too long. Neville Goddard would remind, you never truly see the other. You see the self, filtered through desire, through wounds, through forgotten dreams. Jung might say, they were an image of your unlived life, a spark that mirrored what you were ready to become. So no, they were never the destination. They were a mirror, but the image you saw in their eyes, that was your soul asking to be welcomed back. You're not grieving a relationship. You're grieving a self you only dared to live through them. A self that felt like sunlight on closed eyelids. Fleeting, but unforgettable. That is the true ache. Not the loss of them, but the echo of a self that is still waiting to be inhabited without a mirror. Sometimes it's not memory that lingers. It's energy, a trace, a whisper in the soul's language, a presence that keeps walking beside you, even when the body is long gone. When you haven't reclaimed the part of yourself they once awakened, every new face becomes a search, not for them, but for that frequency you once touched. That brief, luminous alignment that made you feel whole. And without knowing it, you begin to project, not love, but longing, not desire, but incompleteness. Jung taught that the unlived life doesn't vanish, it echoes. And those echoes shape your vision, color your emotions, distort the purity of the present with the residue of the past. You don't mean to compare, but you do. Because something inside is still waiting for a return, to a moment, to a sensation, to a self. But without integration, each new intimacy becomes a shadow, a substitute, a soft repetition of what was never fully understood. And the soul, gentle and wise, will keep circling back to the source of the echo, not to suffer, but to be seen. There are parts of you that have never truly died. They have only gone quiet, retreated into the shadows of your psyche, sleeping under layers of obligation, fear, and forgetfulness. Jung knew this well. He saw the soul as a garden of archetypes, some in bloom, others in hibernation, waiting for the mythic kiss of remembrance. And then someone arrives, not perfect, not permanent, but potent. With them, something ancient stirs, the dreamer, the artist, the fearless child, a facet of you that had been waiting for just the right moment to exhale. This isn't about romance. It's about resurrection. That one person. They weren't the source of the light. They were the match. They lit the flame. But the fire was yours. Neville Goddard would say they were the outer image of your inner self, calling you to become what you had forgotten you were capable of being. So if they live on in your memory, it's not to torment you, it's to remind you that the soul once stirred, and it is not done dreaming. She was 48 when he arrived. He stayed for 4 months and left an imprint that lasted 10 years. She told herself it wasn't love. It was too brief, too undefined. But every time his name crossed her mind, something flickered, a memory, a fire, a voice that had once been hers. She wasn't obsessed with him. She was obsessed with how seen she had felt, how daring her words had become, how her laughter had returned without warning. Through time and through silence, she began to understand. It wasn't him. It was who she became when her soul was given room to breathe. When her voice, so long edited and softened, spoke in full color. Jung spoke of individuation, of becoming fully oneself, and that is what had begun in those 4 months, not because of his presence, but because of the way she rose to meet it. When she finally reclaimed that voice as hers, not borrowed, not dependent, his memory softened. He no longer lived in the ache. He lived in the gratitude. He was not the destination. He was the opening, and what truly mattered was what came through. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. The soul is not linear. It doesn't move on just because the calendar says it's time. It circles, it lingers, it repeats, not to torment, but to complete. When something emotionally profound is interrupted, when a feeling is awakened but not understood, when a part of you begins to live but is suddenly silenced, the soul does not forget. It loops, not because it is stuck, but because it is sacred. Jung described these moments as unfinished inner stories, psychic patterns that seek integration. And until they are lived consciously, they echo in dreams, in memories that won't fade, in names that still tighten the chest. Neville Goddard would say, "You are revisiting not the person, but the self you almost became. The soul returns, not to reopen wounds, but to awaken the version of you that was left behind, paused, incomplete, calling for closure that isn't erasure, but embodiment. This is why you still feel them, why their name appears in silence, why part of you still waits at the moment they arrived, not because they were your destiny, but because something in you remains unlived. There are moments in life that don't end, they echo. And sometimes, to break the echo, we must return to where it began. Not to repeat, but to reclaim. Find an image from that time, a memory, a scent. Not to feed nostalgia, but to call back the version of you who stood at the threshold of becoming. Ask softly, in silence, who was I then? What in me felt safe enough to emerge in their presence? And what still remains there, waiting? This is not a ritual of forgetting. It is one of return, of honoring. Some write the name down and offer it to the earth, not as a burial, but as gratitude for the mirror that cracked them open. And from the lips of the soul, a vow is spoken, not to the other, but to the self. You reminded me who I was. But I no longer need your presence to be her. I carry her now, fully, for me. This is not the end. It is a quiet homecoming. You are not missing them. You are remembering a version of yourself that was only ever partially lived. The ache is not abandonment, it is calling. It is the soul's whisper echoing through the corridors of time. Don't forget who you were becoming. Carl Jung reminds us, every unlived self remains in the unconscious, waiting to be reclaimed through dreams, symbols, and the people who seem to arrive by fate. Neville Goddard would affirm, you never truly meet another, only the reflection of the self you're ready to encounter. And so that person, they were not your ending, they were your mirror, your myth. The pain you carry is not a wound, it is an invitation. They were the door, but the place you were always meant to return to is your own soul. If you made it this far, comment, "Estoy despierta," and let the others who are still searching know they are not alone. Another doorway awaits in the next video. But for now, let there be silence and the soft remembrance of who you truly are.